Joe and Mika Brzezinski Scarborough, who famously warned of the growing threat of Trump's fascism, also had an interesting announcement to make. As many of you are aware, the news has been pretty bleak recently, in the past 200-300 years. Listen, but this weekend, there was one story that was so disturbing, so dark, even the news couldn't handle it. Joe and Mika Brzezinski Scarborough, who famously warned of the growing threat of Trump's fascism, also had an interesting announcement to make.
Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we?
Because you said he was Hitler. We don't know what the visit was. We don't know what the tone of the visit was.
We talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents.
Oh, I bet you really laid down the gauntlet, Joe. I bet you walked in there and just let him have it, didn't you, Joey? Mr. President, your rhetoric is outrageous. I cannot in good conscience... Ooh, are those macaroons? The pink one is raspberry. As many of you are aware, the news has been pretty bleak recently, in the past 200-300 years. Listen, but this weekend, there was one story that was so disturbing, so dark, even the news couldn't handle it.
We're not going to show because of how disturbing it is.
I was extremely disturbed to see this.
Horrible, horrible, violent imagery.
Violent and dehumanizing imagery.
We're only going to show you a clip of this briefly.
All right, that's enough. Let's take it down.
I didn't get to see it at all. I can't imagine how devastating this footage must be.
Former President Donald Trump shared a video, this one, on his Truth Social account featuring an image of President Joe Biden hogtied on the back of a pickup truck.
Aren't you the same networks that show reruns of 9/11 every year? I mean, I don't think it's great that Trump is posting things like this, but it's not like people really think Joe Biden was tied up in the back of the truck.
There is no doubt.
There's no misinformation.
There's some disinformation from the left, but comparing it to what Donald Trump spews out every day, every week, comparing it to what Elon Musk is spewing out, unfortunately, on X, you sound like Brett Stevens now, with all due respect. It's a joke. That's a real time.
And you sound like him, who looks like Rachel Maddow.
You understand what I'm saying?
I've never argued with that. I've never argued that of a false equivalency. I just said there is misinformation from both sides. No, I lived through COVID. Don't tell me there wasn't misinformation.
But there's a difference between...
I lived through stupid policies based on bad information and stifled information.
But intent matters.
That's what Zuckerberg said. He said they were forcing us not to put out...
There was a 2014 study that showed that Fortune 500 companies were more likely to pick a female CEO if the company was struggling, basically setting women up for the big job, but to also fail. If they did well, fine. But if they failed, like, look, we have a female CEO while failing. And that's what I feel like they did to Kamala Harris. When Biden refused to step aside and not run again, he was supposed to be that bridge. He backed off on that promise due to arrogance. And then he drops out after a catastrophic debate performance. And they set Kamala Harris up to fail. It was a 3-month campaign, and she was supposed to introduce herself to the American people. No wonder people were Googling, did Joe Biden drop out? And so...
No. You saying 3 months wasn't long enough? It was too long. It was long enough. It was long enough.
If they had a primary...
It's not that they didn't have time to introduce. They met someone and didn't like them.
You know what would be good at MSNBC is if you actually did think about both sides and weighed the arguments and made constructive arguments against that side while respecting them. You don't do that. It's propaganda all the time.
What you just said,
and by denying any...
What you just said just described my show. It's like I had a Trump lawyer on this week. I've had Steve Bannon on my show. I've had Trump White House officials.
I watch MSNBC.
Right, so you describing a goal that I'm achieving, I take that as a compliment.
The usual suspects, I'll call them on the left in the media, is just, again, not looking in the mirror. It did
no, they
not.
think
It
they
did
didn't
not.
call him Hitler loudly enough.
Or that just a lot of people texted me things like, well, you can't fix stupid. Sorry, that doesn't work with me. Yeah, you're stupid because you're not thinking about the bigger picture. You're not thinking about maybe we did something wrong. Maybe we're not perfect.
Jon Stewart has ignited a media firestorm that's rocking the entire news industry by unleashing a brutally honest, no-holds-barred takedown of MSNBC's biggest stars, exposing what critics are calling the most shameless case of cable news hypocrisy in recent memory. From comparing Trump to Hitler on air to accepting his dinner invitations off camera. Welcome back, gossip lovers. Today we're diving into the explosive controversy that has the internet buzzing and media elites panicking. Jon Stewart, the legendary comedian and political commentator, has just delivered what many are calling his most savage critique yet. And his target isn't politicians, but the media itself. This isn't just another celebrity feud. It's a moment that's exposing the gap between what news anchors say on camera and what they do behind closed doors. It's about double standards, manufactured outrage, and the question everyone's asking, is cable news about truth or just political theater with a dinner menu? Let's break down the drama that has both sides of the political spectrum cheering and media executives sweating. Jon Stewart's latest confrontation with MSNBC's Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski is igniting a firestorm across the media landscape. And it's all because of one devastatingly blunt line. Because you said he was Hitler. The drama erupted after the Morning Joe hosts, who have spent years warning viewers about the fascist threat of Donald Trump, revealed they'd met with the president-elect at Mar-a-Lago. Mika tried to justify the meeting, asking, why wouldn't we? Stewart, never one to let hypocrisy slide, shot back with the now viral retort that instantly exposed the glaring contradiction in their public and private behavior. This wasn't just a throwaway quip. It was a direct hit on the credibility of Scarborough and Brzezinski, who have built their brand on resisting Trump's supposed authoritarianism. Stewart's call-out resonated because it captured what so many viewers were thinking. How can you brand someone as a modern-day Hitler on air, then rush to shake his hand behind closed doors? The internet exploded, with critics from both the left and right accusing the MSNBC duo of opportunism, grifting, and abandoning their principles for access and ratings. Even other media figures like Megyn Kelly and Nikki Haley piled on, calling the meeting cowardice and a publicity stunt. Stewart didn't stop there. He mocked the idea that the hosts had any real intention of holding Trump accountable, suggesting instead that their resistance act was more about showmanship than substance. The implication that cable news is less journalism, more political theater, especially when power, prestige, and a good catering spread are involved. With MSNBC's ratings under pressure and trust in legacy media at an all-time low, this confrontation has sparked a much bigger debate. Are media elites truly speaking truth to power, or just playing both sides to stay relevant? And if Stewart is willing to torch his own side for hypocrisy, who's next in the crosshairs? But the hypocrisy goes even deeper, and Stewart wasn't finished exposing it. His latest viral moment has the internet buzzing as he takes direct aim at Joe Scarborough's so-called tough guy persona. After years of watching Scarborough thunder about the dangers of Trump from his MSNBC soapbox, Stewart couldn't resist exposing what he sees as pure performance art. The scene? Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, who have spent years warning viewers about Trump's fascism, suddenly accepting an invitation to meet with the president-elect at Mar-a-Lago. Stewart delivers another now comic line. I bet you walked in there and just let him have it, didn't you, Joey? Mr. President, your rhetoric is outrageous. I cannot in good conscience. Oh, are those macaroons? With that one sarcastic punch, Stewart calls out the gap between Scarborough's on-air bravado and his real-life behavior. The implication is clear. It's easy to play resistance hero in the studio, but when the cameras are off and the hors d'oeuvres are being passed, all that righteous fury melts away. Stewart's mockery paints a picture of Scarborough and Mika enjoying the perks of insider access, fine food, fancy seats, and polite conversation, while the tough talk and danger to democracy warnings are left at the studio door. The contrast couldn't be more stark, from Hitler comparisons to reverence, all in the blink of an eye. Or in this case, the extension of a dinner invitation. The Morning Joe hosts aren't the only ones feeling the heat. Their ratings reportedly took a nosedive after the revelation, and even fellow MSNBC hosts and prominent liberals have joined the pile-on, calling the meeting everything from cowardice to a publicity stunt. Critics argue that this isn't journalism, it's political theater with a dinner menu, and Stewart's viral call-out has made it impossible to ignore. But while the Mar-a-Lago dinner exposed personal hypocrisy, Stewart was just getting started. His next target? MSNBC's shameless manufacturing of outrage and selective standards about what content is too disturbing to show viewers. Jon Stewart just caught MSNBC red-handed, and viewers are calling it one of the most revealing media moments of the year. The drama started when MSNBC anchors dramatically warned the audience about a violent and disturbing image shared by Donald Trump, complete with ominous music and grave expressions. They hyped it up as if it were the opening scene of a national tragedy, refusing to show the image on air to protect viewers. But Stewart wasn't buying it, and neither should you. So what was this terrifying image that MSNBC was so desperate to hide? As Stewart exposed, it turned out to be nothing more than a doctored meme, an airbrushed photo of Joe Biden hogtied on the back of a pickup truck. Not an actual threat, not a call to violence, just another internet meme. Stewart's incredulous reaction cut through the melodrama. You wouldn't show it on television. An airbrushed Biden decal on the back of a truck. The moment perfectly highlighted how networks can manufacture outrage and sensationalize even the most trivial content when it fits their narrative. The revelation was particularly damning because it exposed not just bias, but the deliberate manipulation of viewers' emotions. With somber music, concerned expressions, and warnings about violent imagery, MSNBC created the impression of a major threat, only to have Stewart pull back the curtain and reveal it was essentially nothing. The embarrassment was palpable, and viewers across the political spectrum called out the network for what many saw as fear-mongering and emotional manipulation. But this wasn't just about one overhyped meme. It revealed a pattern of selective outrage and manufactured crises that Stewart argues has become the business model for cable news. Create fear, stoke outrage, keep viewers glued to their screens, all while positioning the network as the moral authority on what constitutes acceptable discourse. It's a playbook that's become increasingly transparent, and Stewart wasn't about to let it go unchallenged. And as we'll see next, the hypocrisy goes even deeper when we examine what content MSNBC does choose to show without hesitation. Jon Stewart just delivered what many are calling his most brutal takedown of MSNBC yet, accusing the network of shocking hypocrisy by invoking 9/11, and the fallout is still reverberating. In a segment that's gone viral, Stewart didn't just go after MSNBC for their relentless anti-Trump coverage. He zeroed in on their selective outrage and double standards, using one of the most sensitive topics in American history to make his point. After exposing how MSNBC refused to show the relatively tame Trump meme, Stewart pointed out the absurdity of the melodrama, reminding viewers that these same networks have no problem replaying the most graphic, traumatic footage from 9/11 every single year, frame by frame, for ratings and remembrance. Stewart's message was crystal clear. When real horror is convenient, MSNBC is all in. But when a satirical Trump meme threatens their preferred narrative, suddenly they're protectors of public decency. Aren't you the same networks that show reruns of 9/11 every year? Stewart asked, cutting through the network's moral posturing. He argued that refusing to air the meme wasn't about shielding viewers from harm. It was about protecting the network's agenda and narrative. When it comes to genuine tragedy, they'll air it for hours. But when it's political satire that doesn't fit their storyline, cue the blackout. This call-out was particularly powerful coming from Stewart, who has been a tireless advocate for 9/11 first responders and has personal connections to the tragedy. By invoking 9/11, Stewart wasn't being flippant. He was highlighting the profound dishonesty and claiming to protect viewers from disturbing content while regularly airing much more traumatic footage when it serves the network's purposes. The hypocrisy Stewart exposed goes beyond just one network or one incident. It raises fundamental questions about media ethics, editorial decisions, and the blurry line between news judgment and political agenda. If content decisions are made based on political convenience rather than consistent standards, can viewers trust anything they see on cable news? And while Stewart was taking MSNBC to task for their handling of visual content, another prominent voice was challenging their political narratives from a different angle. Bill Maher is never one to mince words, but his latest takedown of the media's Kamala Harris narrative is making even his harshest critics do a double take. In a moment that's gone viral, Maher directly challenged MSNBC pundits and other journalists who claimed Harris was set up to fail in her presidential run because she only had 3 months to introduce herself to the American public. Maher's blunt response, you saying 3 months wasn't long enough? It was too long. It's not that they didn't have time to introduce her. They met someone and they didn't like them. This wasn't just a throwaway quip. Maher's comments cut through a week of media hand-wringing where panelists insisted Harris was a victim of circumstance, sexism, or even a Democratic Party conspiracy. Instead, Maher pointed to the obvious. Harris was the sitting vice president with more than enough national exposure, and voters simply didn't connect with her. He dismissed the idea that America isn't ready for a woman president, saying, I think America is perfectly willing to elect a woman. They just didn't like the last two that were put up. Maher even joked that in the age of mass media, 107 days is not long enough to know somebody? We just get sicker of them. Maher's takedown didn't stop at Harris. He accused the media, especially MSNBC, of running interference for their preferred candidates, using tired excuses and identity politics to avoid facing uncomfortable truths. Instead of honest analysis, Maher argued, viewers get a steady diet of spin and selective outrage. Significant is doved with Stewart's critiques. While Stewart focused on hosts like Scarborough and Mika, Maher targeted political narratives and excuses. Together, they present a devastating critique of cable news from angles. Now, not just individual hypocrisy, but systematic bias in how events and candidates are covered. This tag team takedown wasn't coordinated, but it might as well have been. The combined effect of two liberal-leaning comedians turning their fire on MSNBC created a perfect storm of criticism that the network couldn't easily dismiss as partisan attacks. And the internet noticed. Jon Stewart and Bill Maher just teamed up for what can only be described as a media meltdown, delivering a coordinated, devastating critique that's left MSNBC reeling and viewers buzzing. While they didn't literally collaborate, their separate but simultaneous takedowns created a perfect storm of criticism that attacked the network from multiple angles and exposed fundamental problems with how news is presented in America. Stewart's surgical focus on hypocrisy, from the Hitler to hors d'oeuvre flip-flop to the manufactured outrage over means, combined powerfully with Maher's willingness to challenge sacred political narratives about candidate failures and identity politics. Together, they presented a comprehensive critique that was impossible to dismiss. The emperor has no clothes, and cable news is more about performance than truth. Stewart tore into MSNBC's habit of manufacturing outrage, highlighting how the network hyped up a satirical Trump meme as violent and disturbing, complete with ominous music and gray faces, only for the big reveal to be a harmless, doctored image of Biden on a pickup truck. Meanwhile, Stewart pointed out, these same anchors have no problem replaying the most graphic 9/11 footage every year for ratings. When real horror is convenient, they're all in. When satire threatens their narrative, suddenly they're guardians of public decency. Enter Bill Maher, who cut through MSNBC's spin on another front. When pundits claimed Kamala Harris was set up to fail because she only had 3 months to campaign, Maher shut it down. You're saying 3 months wasn't long enough? It was too long. They met someone and they didn't like them. Maher's bluntness exposed how media excuses and identity politics are often used to shield favored candidates from honest criticism, while the public sees right through it. Together, Stewart and Maher's tag team takedown has ignited a firestorm. Their coordinated attacks have made it impossible for MSNBC to hide behind moral posturing or scripted outrage. The result? Viewers are questioning whether cable news is about truth or just team loyalty, and whether the line between journalism and political theater has completely disappeared. But as devastating as these specific critiques are, they point to an even bigger problem. A media ecosystem that has lost the trust of the public and seems to care more about narratives than truth. Jon Stewart has just blown the lid off one of the media's biggest open secrets, and you won't believe what he's exposed. In a viral segment that's got both sides buzzing, Stewart turned his legendary wit on MSNBC, accusing the network and its star hosts Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski of jaw-dropping hypocrisy. The receipts? They are undeniable. And the double standards are impossible to ignore. It all started when Stewart called out Joe and Mika for spending years warning viewers that Trump was a fascist and Hitler-like, only to leap at the chance for a cozy Mar-a-Lago meeting the moment they were invited. Stewart's now iconic retort, because you said he was Hitler, instantly exposed the gap between their on-air outrage and their off-air opportunism. It's the kind of hypocrisy that turns resistance into political theater, complete with filet mignon and White House wine. But that's just the beginning. Stewart didn't stop at private dinners. He exposed how MSNBC manufactures outrage for ratings, hyping up a Trump meme as violent and disturbing with ominous music and grave expressions, only for it to be a satirical image of Biden on a pickup truck. Meanwhile, the same network has no problem replaying the most graphic 9/11 footage every year or airing real-time disaster and tragedy coverage when it suits their narrative. The hypocrisy runs even deeper. Stewart and Bill Maher both called out MSNBC's selective outrage, from COVID-era fear-mongering to making endless excuses for Kamala Harris's failures. Maher's blunt assessment, America just didn't like her, cut through the spin, while Stewart mocked Scarborough's tough guy persona, suggesting it melts away the moment the hors d'oeuvres arrive. What makes this moment particularly significant is that it's not coming from traditional media critics or partisan opponents. These are voices from within the liberal ecosystem. Comedians who have built careers largely criticizing Republicans, now turning their attention to the hypocrisy on their own side. It signals a growing disillusionment with media performance art and a hunger for authenticity. regardless of political alignment. The fallout has been severe. Morning Joe and social media is filled with saying they can no longer watch the show with the same eyes. In legacy media, with viewers and independent voices who don't seem beholden. Is this the beginning of a true media reckoning? Has Jon Stewart declared war on cable news itself? Jon Stewart has officially declared war on MSNBC, and his latest barrage of savage attacks has the entire media world buzzing. In a series of viral segments, Stewart didn't just poke fun at the left-leaning network. He dismantled its credibility, exposing what he calls a propaganda machine disguised as journalism. The internet is ablaze, and for good reason. Stewart isn't just taking shots from the sidelines, he's calling out his own team with a level of honesty and ferocity rarely seen in the world of cable news. It all started when Stewart zeroed in on Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, the Morning Joe hosts who spent years warning viewers that Trump was a fascist and danger to democracy. But when the cameras were off and an invitation to Mar-a-Lago appeared, the duo couldn't resist. Stewart's now iconic retort, "Because you said he was Hitler," instantly exposed the gap between their on-air outrage and their off-air opportunism. But Stewart's war isn't just about one dinner. He's called out MSNBC's entire playbook, hyping up trivial Trump memes as violent national crises, manufacturing outrage with ominous music and grave faces, and then refusing to show the supposedly disturbing content, while having no problem replaying graphic 9/11 footage for ratings. Stewart's message is clear. This isn't journalism, it's selective outrage and performance art, with media elites cozying up to power when it's convenient and moralizing when it's profitable. The fallout has been explosive. Viewers are questioning whether MSNBC is truly speaking truth to power or just playing both sides for access and ratings. Stewart's relentless honesty has sparked a wider debate about the future of journalism, media hypocrisy, and the blurry line between news and theater. What makes Stewart's attacks so effective is that they come from someone who can't easily be dismissed as a right-wing critic or Trump supporter. He's a liberal icon, turning his fire on his own side in the name of intellectual honesty and consistency. It's a reminder that principles should matter more than partisanship, and that hypocrisy should be called out wherever it appears.